Hello, everybody. We're back. No nets, no edits. We're going to run through this. We're going to answer some questions, and then I want to get into talking about the change in the death head from the open mouth to the closed mouth. But first, my lovely wife's going to read this week's questions.
Okay, we got one from Bridgeport Bob. Talk about Bear, Diamond Danny, Crazy Joe.
Well, Bear was murdered, I think it was about 2006. 2005. I can't remember exactly. And they attributed that to the Outlaws. Bear was a longtime member, a good guy, a Vietnam veteran. I think he was in the Army. A couple of Purple Hearts, uh, maybe a Bronze Star. I don't remember. Didn't know him well. Knew him over many years, but when you live on the West Coast and they're geographically located on the East Coast, you don't get real tight with them. I got real tight with Sandy Alexander because I worked on a project with him. Got close to Brendan for a while and Chuck and Glenn, but of course, Andy from Cleveland ultimately transferred to Ventura. So those close relationships are hard to nurture when you live so many miles apart. Diamond Dan, I knew Diamond Dan. We both got in the club around the same time. He got busted. He wound up doing like a 20-year stretch. I remember when Edward Olmos was having problems with Emmy with the movie American Me. Diamond Dan was in jail at the time, and he's one of the guys I reached out to try to straighten it out. I was getting messages from James Olmos and from William Forsythe uh, trying to straighten out that whole mess. The three technical advisors had got killed, uh, and Dan got in the middle of it with me trying to get the situation squashed. But Dan ultimately came home, went south, and can't remember what charter it was, but went back to jail and then came home. I think he was killed in a bike wreck. But Diamond Dan was an old school Hell's Angel, kind of a gangster, but I liked him and always had a lot of fun with him. All right, next question.
Dale writes, what can you tell us about the 3 day run in Pismo Beach in the late 90s?
Well, Andy Shishon, who had been a Cleveland member, transferred to Ventura. He set that whole thing up pretty much. I did the negotiating with the cops, and I'm laughing a little bit. I'm thinking about last week. Somebody wrote and said some disparaging remarks about me talking to the cops, and I made a comment. When you did runs and whatnot, you had to open a line of communication with the cops because they would just go, over the top, thinking you're going to come and burn their town down. I can't remember who was in charge, but you know, I remember dealing with the cops a lot. Was very suspected type relationship. I didn't have a lot of trust with them. I got close to the chief of police in Cody, Wyoming, during that USA run. We had USA run to Cody. So I'm getting off the track, but you do develop relationships. And I went up there, did all the negotiating with the cops, opened the line of communication and contacts for them in case you had any citizens panicking. But Andy Shishon handled that. It was all catered. I think each charter got a motel room on one of the motels right on the beach. There was also camping available. There was people riding their bikes on the beach and whatnot, which I kind of frowned on. I didn't recommend it, getting all that sand in your chain or belt, whatever you had. But it was a great run, a lot of fun. Nobody got arrested, nobody got hurt, nobody got shot at. It was a good weekend.
Okay, Captain Drift writes, what about Hell's Angels and Gypsy Jokers?
Well, I'll give you just a close insight into what I know. I know the fight started, and I think it was Robert Poland and Nazi Dave were in Golden Gate Park, and they had been friends with the Gypsy Jokers. Hell's Angels had interacted with them for a while. Something went haywire. They're not even sure what. I have to do some follow up. The person I would ask is in Europe right now, visiting and having some fun. When he gets back, I'll try to get in depth. But I know the Gypsy Jokers just went up and attacked. I think they hit Dave in the head with a baseball bat, and they jumped on Robert, and that basically kicked off the problem. And Dave told me he didn't remember a lot of it. He was loaded on LSD. They were just out having fun on a Sunday afternoon, and somehow somebody got offended. Now, ultimately, the Gypsy Jokers went up into the Oregon, Washington area, and in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe, late 80s, I think, Richmond put on a run up in Portland, Oregon area. And we went up there, and the Gypsy Jokers did show up. We had fun with them. There was no issues. I think enough time had passed where there was no more hard feelings. But I'll try to get some more information, or if you have anything specific, uh, write it, and I'll see if I can get the answer for you.
Nico writes, would you consider starting a new club?
Uh, I don't know. I've thought about it. Perhaps, reprising an old club. I have an old club in mind. I think about from time to time, and I would start from scratch, but it would be a rebirth of an old club. And people that know me and understand my background, I'm sure you know what club I'm talking about. Okay.
Okay, Dale Ducharme wrote, I was 8 years old when you guys moved to town. You were our neighbors on Ramona Street. We were one of the only houses that never got robbed.
Right. The clubhouse was on Fix Way. Uh, my grandfather's house that I ultimately wound up moving into was about 3 blocks down from the clubhouse. I grew up on the avenue on and off. I spent every summer there with my grandparents. And then Ramona Street was down 5 or 6, 7 blocks. And there was a little housing unit there. There was probably 5 or 6 apartments. They weren't apartments, they were little houses. And Tom was in one. Another member named Daryl was in one. And somebody else was in one of the other units. It might have been Dave, Cave Dave. But we kind of took over that area. At first, the neighbors were kind of like skeptical of what was going on. But we had the same issues up at the Ventura Clubhouse. The truck drivers across the street were getting robbed all the time. It's a real rough end of town when we went there in the 70s. And ultimately, we cleaned out all the riffraff. Nobody on that street on Ramona around us, and in the immediate area, got robbed. Nothing around the clubhouse got robbed. Yeah, I remember that well. Uh, you said you were the little kid, used to peer over the fence and talk to us. I have a memory of that, but it was a long time ago, my friend.
Richard Dashwood writes, it makes me sick when the keyboard warriors attempt to school you.
Well, I find it kind of humorous, and I guess you got to let them put their work in. Their fingers need the exercise. They're pounding out those insults to me, but it is amazing. You have these people that confront me, and I don't ever remember any of them being in any meetings, and any runs, at any parties, or any fights, anything that had anything to do with the club. But yet they complain, and yet they come here every week and insult me, and but that stuff doesn't bother me. I mean, for me, a good day is not having somebody shoot at me.
Okay, well, hang on.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We got an insult coming.
No,
Duck,
I'm gonna
incoming.
try. I'm gonna try to say nothing to this guy.
Okay, please
It's
don't.
from hate, fuck, fake, tough guys. What you're bragging about at your advanced age is sad. Your stories are embarrassing. I'm not saying a word.
And that's it. That's the context. Okay, I remember that question. I streamlined it down a little bit because he was puffing himself up, and his name is hates fake tough guys.
Yeah.
You should learn to love yourself, my friend, because I don't know what your problem is. These are stories that I'm telling. If you don't like them, man, just turn the dial, man. You know, move on. I don't know what the issue is. And if you're really that sincere, come to Ventura, man. I'm easy to find. I'm out walking every day. I walk 5 miles a day, and I'm really easy to locate. You can't miss me. I'm an old man with a little Jack Russell dog. I'll be more than happy
Okay.
to talk to you.
Tim writes, what about Janis Joplin's connection with the club member Sweet William? Did you know about that?
Yeah, it, I look. I heard it was Chocolate George. Then Chocolate George got killed, and then it was Sweet William. But there's another member, Freewheelin' Frank, that I think she really had a real relationship with. I had a friend of mine, Bob Seidman, and if you look him up on the internet, he's a famous photographer from the '60s. Got some pictures he took over the years hanging in my house of the Grateful Dead. But he was friends with Janis, and he took a bunch of provocative pictures of Janis Joplin. But as far as her boyfriend, I think Freewheelin' Frank was an actual boyfriend. I think she probably went out with Chocolate George and Sweet William. I think Sweet William and her had a relationship, but I think Sweet William had a relationship with a lot of ladies.
Huh. Okay. Hingle McCringleberry. Yo, you seem smart as well as thoughtful. What's with hanging out with criminals? Example, Irish and allegations of sex with a minor. Did you ever give thought or pause or question to your choices? God.
Well, you know, I give pause, and question to some of the questions I answer. But being a smartass, look, that was something that took place. I think it involved 6 or 7 guys. This girl showed up to party, and they gave her a party, and she had her own legal issues, I was told, and she cut a deal with the district attorney's office. She didn't look like no 15-year-old I'd ever seen, and I'm not sure she was 15 years old. You know, a lot of stuff you read in the papers is never correct. In fact, most of it's incorrect. I was researching a case a couple of days ago about that Navy SEAL that killed that ISIS fighter, and you know, you got reports he was 17, reports he was 15, reports he was 13, and I think in reality he was, you know, 17 years old, and a Navy SEAL wound up being charged with a murder for him. So you know, you don't know what you read in the paper. As far as Irish and those guys, I believed them when they said what they said. You know, Grubby Glenn, Whitey, Brutus. I mean, there's a whole list of guys that got caught up in that. And this girl made a deal with the district attorney. Uh, is that the only crime I'm suspect of? No, you know, some of the guys uh, did some crimes. The murders of Margot Compton and her boyfriend and the twins is terrible. You know, but we're never going to really know who was responsible. I think Bug Eye Bob went up there and did the shooting. Did you know, Buck Garrett order the shooting? Buck told me no, and you know what? I talked to Buck. You know, you can write your questions in and make your allegations. And I know when that Secrets of the Hells Angels was on, everybody was writing me about, you know, the Margot Compton murders. I got drug into that whole thing when I was in Terminal Island prison fighting my own case, which I ultimately beat. I got a not guilty out of it. The Fed sent a rat in there, and they were recording conversations. They were trying to get me to incriminate either myself, the club, or Buck on those murders. Ultimately, I got subpoenaed to the trial. My testimony was all struck because I expressed to the jury that I had been in a federal prison, but yet I wasn't a felon. And I explained to the jury that I got framed by the FBI, and they struck all that stuff. But do I have thought and do I have pause? Of course I do. I'm not happy about that Mongol cousin was 15 that got blown up in that motorcycle shop at the frame up. But I didn't carry the bomb in there. I didn't order the bomb. In fact, I was against it. But sometimes you get involved in an organization, you get overruled on shit, and you get caught up in shit. You could have got caught up in that conspiracy. I think there was enough people who were informants. Made it clear to the investigating feds that I wasn't involved, but yeah, sure. I have thoughts about things, and as far as your remarks, I don't know if that's an offhanded comment to me. It's like you're giving me a compliment, but the reality of it is, you're really talking shit about me. So don't come back here if you think that I'm doing something wrong. But this kind of drifts me into what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to close this thing out with, the early history of the Hell's Angels. A lot of it is on opinion. Some of the stuff I remember hearing it in the officers' meetings. I made the officers' meetings every month for years. I got a lot of information, and I retain a lot of information, as some of you have noted. But this is something Sonny told me personally. Sonny and I had a conversation about it. We were talking about going from the from the little death head called the Bumblebee to the big death head. And in the mid 60s, Sonny told me this personally in a conversation in the Oakland clubhouse. He headed south, and it was in 1957. He started the Oakland Charter along with other people. Vic Betancourt, I think in '58, started the Southern California Hells Angels, and they had the larger death head. You see pictures floating around the internet. When Sonny went down there, he broke down. Vic Betancourt ran into him. They were both Hells Angels, but with different logos, different clubs. Sonny still had the small Bumblebee logo, and Sonny got handed a card from Vic, and he liked the idea to change the logo in the original Hells Angels to the bigger Death Head, and it doesn't go over well. Purdue, the mother charter, was totally against it. Sonny didn't stop him. I think he got one of the members' gut to work on the new larger logo. Sonny wasn't an artist. Sonny gets the new logo design, gets the patches made up, and he sends them to Purdue. What's Purdue do? They shoot holes in them, send them back to Oakland. And now there's a problem between the North and the South. And it's interesting. Dana was a Satan slave. Dana later became a Hell's Angel. Dana Edwards, Dana Traxel, he had two last names. He wrote in 1965, he wrote into Bass Lake, and he wrote in there right in the midst of that fight. The North was fighting the South over the little Death Head. And Dana was a young guy. He told me personally, he goes, I thought, Jesus Christ, I wrote in there, and he's thinking to himself, this was all new to him. Bass Lake was kind of becoming the hangout place for all the outlaw bikers to go to. And he said he pulled in and he thought to himself, Jesus Christ, if these guys are doing this to each other, what are they going to do to me? But he hung out. He stayed there. Later that night, the fight subsided. And, Bass Lake was becoming a place to settle club issues, complaints, whatnot. Uh, they changed the Death Head. Ultimately, the North went over. Sonny was the face and the voice of the Hells Angels. There's no doubt about it. He pulled the power from Southern California, Purdue, to Oakland. He got what he wanted. He also, after the Lynch report came out in '65, decided we should go to a bottom rocker, state rocker, and that's what we did. So the Betty style Death Head had the open patch. And when people started returning from prison, from that beef that I talked about earlier with Irish and Whitey and Brutus and Grubby Glenn, I can't remember who else was caught up in that, but people said they wanted the Death Head closed. And there was a big vote back and forth. It went on for months. I didn't want to give up my Betty patch. And my original Betty patch, I had it mounted on the wall. I had a second Betty patch, and what I did was I closed the mouth on my Betty patch with black thread, thinking I would placate the people that were complaining. But ultimately, it got changed officially. Betty was getting too old to do all this and to change the pattern and whatnot. And we had some really nice patches coming in from Europe, and the patches from Europe went out, and that became the universal patch for the Hells Angels with the closed mouth. I know this is not new for a lot of you, but I thought it kind of tied in with that question about the Irish and whatnot. But that's kind of the story on that. Keep asking your questions. I'm having fun answering them. I hope it's not boring you guys and you haters out there. Keep the mail coming. I like to answer them, but keep them, keep them on the cutting edge. Don't just give me your "I hate you, George." That's nothing. That has no class to it. Give me some real down and dirty shit, okay? And I'll talk about your mom in return. All right, I'll see you guys. Take care.